Until her final breath, Part 1. Chapter 1, The Crimson Eyes in the Mirror. Myraelin awoke with the sound of her own name on someone else's lips. It wasn't the sharp cry of a stranger in the night, nor the gentle whisper of a dreamer in love, it was something in between. A voice threaded with centuries, sorrow, and devotion, spoken as if from behind the glass of her mirror. She sat up slowly, her breath catching in her throat. The room was still, painted silver by moonlight, the edges of her vanity softened by shadow. But the mirror. The mirror was wrong. Her reflection stared back, but there was something different. Her own face, same as always. Same soft waves of midnight hair, same delicate arch of brow. And yet her eyes, no, not her eyes. Someone else's gaze lived within them. Crimson. Not a trick of light. Not a passing illusion. Her reflection blinked a beat too late, and in that blink, she saw him. A man, tall, draped in black and red like spilled ink, standing behind her reflection with eyes the color of blood and memory. Eyes that seemed to grieve the very sight of her. And when she turned, he was gone. Not a sound. Not a whisper. Not even the creak of a floorboard to suggest he'd ever been there. Only her heartbeat, pounding in the silence. That morning, she found a letter on her windowsill. No postage. No address. Only her name, written in handwriting that looked achingly familiar, and yet she had never seen it before in her life. Myraelin. If you are reading this, it means the curse has begun again. Please don't run. Not this time. I remember everything. And this time, you will too. R. She stared at the letter until the ink began to blur. Not from rain. Not from time. From the single tear that had slipped down her cheek, before she even realized it had begun to fall. Chapter 2, The Stranger in Crimson. Myraelin told herself it was all a dream. The mirror. The eyes. The letter that still sat, untouched, on her nightstand. Perhaps she had written it herself while half asleep, caught in one of those lucid spirals between midnight and dawn. She was imaginative. Prone to daydreams. Her grandmother used to say she'd inherited old blood, as if that explained the strange moods that fell over her like storm clouds. And yet, when she looked in the mirror now, she avoided her own eyes. She dressed carefully that morning, drawn to a deep burgundy coat she didn't remember buying. The color clung to her like a memory, rich, haunting, warm as wine and as cold as dried blood. As she stepped into the gray light of early autumn, the town of Evervale greeted her in its usual hush. Cobblestone streets still wet from last night's rain, wrought iron lamps casting long shadows, and the faint scent of burning wood from distant hearths. The shops had just begun to open, and the world felt suspended, like a breath held too long. She crossed the square toward the antiquarian bookshop she visited every Thursday, though she couldn't explain why she felt the urge to go today. It wasn't Thursday. But something inside her whispered, "Go." The bell above the door chimed softly. Dust motes danced in the golden light that filtered through stained glass windows. Rows of ancient tomes lined the walls, and behind the counter, the shopkeeper nodded politely before disappearing into the back, leaving her alone. Or so she thought. Her fingertips grazed the spine of a velvet-bound book titled Hearts Entombed. And then, "You always choose that one first." The voice came from the far corner. Smooth as moonlight on still water. Deep, but with the gentlest edge of sorrow. She turned. And there he was. The man from the mirror. No longer a vision. No longer a ghost. Standing between the shelves like a shadow made flesh. He was tall, regal in posture, but relaxed in presence. As if the entire world bent quietly around him. He wore a long black coat, subtly embroidered at the cuffs with silver thread that shimmered like constellations. A dark crimson scarf was loosely tied around his throat, and when he moved, it caught the light like living fire. But it was his face that stopped her breath. High cheekbones. A strong, sculpted jaw. Skin pale as porcelain, almost luminous. And those eyes, deep, unwavering, and impossibly red. Not harsh, not monstrous. But full of centuries. As if they'd wept through time. He smiled, just enough to wound her. "Myraelin," he said. "You're even more beautiful in this life." She should have run. She should have demanded who he was, how he knew her name. But instead, her lips parted on instinct. And she whispered, not knowing why. "You've said that before." His eyes flickered with pain and wonder. "Then you do remember." A long silence followed. "Not everything," she admitted. "But, something. I dreamed of you. And the mirror. Anne." "The letter," he said. "I left it where you'd find it." "Who are you?" Her voice trembled, though she didn't feel afraid, only overwhelmed, like a wave she couldn't stop. "Rhysand," he said gently. "They used to call me the Crimson Lord. But to you, I've always just been Rhys." Her breath caught again. She remembered that name. From a dream. From a poem. From a place where moonlight bled through broken stained glass. "This isn't possible," she whispered. "And yet here we are," he said, stepping forward. For the 13th time. The bell above the door rang again, this time a warning, not a welcome. Rhysand turned sharply, the crimson in his eyes glowing brighter, just for a breath. "We shouldn't speak here. Not yet. Not where they can watch." "Who?" "Come tonight," he interrupted, voice low. "To the old cathedral ruins, past the orchard. You'll remember the way." "And if I don't?" she asked. He smiled again, broken and beautiful. "You will." And then he was gone. Chapter 3, The Forgotten Dance. The ruins waited like a memory. At dusk, Myraelin walked alone beneath the autumn-draped trees, their skeletal branches arched like ribs overhead. The orchard she passed was overgrown and hushed, its once careful rows now tangled with time. Every step she took felt familiar, and yet not her own. As though she followed footprints made by someone who wore her face but walked in another century. The old cathedral stood ahead, half sunken into the earth, draped in ivy and crumbling stone. Its roof had collapsed long ago, and a withered rose window, fractured into shards, still crowned the front wall. Light spilled through it in violet and blood-red tones, casting stained-glass shadows on the overgrown path. She stopped just outside the threshold. The wind whispered through the broken arches. "You came," said Rhysand, stepping from the shadows. He no longer wore the coat from the bookshop. Tonight, he was draped in a cloak the color of old velvet, clasped at the shoulder with a brooch shaped like a crescent moon pierced by thorns. His hair, dark as ink, stirred slightly in the breeze, though no other leaf dared to move. The way he looked at her, it wasn't with longing. It was with reverence. And grief. "I almost didn't," she admitted, wrapping her arms around herself. "But you did," he replied. "Because a part of you remembers. Even if your mind denies it, your soul does not." She looked around. "What is this place?" "Once," he said, voice low, "it was the last place we danced together." She blinked. "Danced?" He stepped closer, slowly, like a waltz of his own. "On the eve of your 21st birthday. In a life where your name was Evelyn, and I was a prince in hiding. You wore a gown the color of twilight. You laughed when I stumbled over my own boots. And he exhaled softly, I told you I would love you until your final breath. Her lips parted, trembling. I don't remember that, she whispered. Not yet, he said. But your body does. He offered his hand. Myraelin hesitated, but only for a moment. Her fingers, cold with the night's chill, found warmth in his. And then the wind stopped. The air shifted. The ruins glowed faintly around them, not with light, but with memory. And the music began. No instruments. No sound. Only the echo of a long-forgotten melody, bleeding through the stone and stars. She moved with him, step for step, though she had never learned to dance. And yet her feet knew the rhythm. Her body remembered his touch. It wasn't just a memory, it was possession. One moment, she was Myraelin. The next, she was someone older, sadder, wiser. Evelyn. Liliane. Soraya. So many names. All of them hers. All of them, lost. Rhysand held her close, one hand at her back, the other laced with hers. They never let us finish the dance, he whispered into her hair. Every time we found each other, time steals you from me before the last note plays. Why? Her voice cracked. Why me? Because you are the key, he said. To breaking it. To breaking her. Myraelin pulled back slightly. Her. Velmora, Rhysand said, voice darkening. The witch who first cursed me. Jealous. Vengeful. Immortal through spite alone. She's returned, Myraelin. I can feel it. And she'll try to take you again. Unless we stop her. How? She asked, heart pounding. We find the life where you died willingly. The life where you chose me, despite the curse. That memory is the only one strong enough to rewrite the spell. But what if I don't remember it in time, she whispered. Rhysand leaned in, his forehead resting gently against hers. Then I'll love you again in the next life. And the one after. And every one that follows. Tears stung her eyes. The music faded. The vision dimmed. And she was left in a crumbling cathedral, holding hands with a stranger who knew her better than she knew herself. She looked into his eyes. Crimson. Eternal. Familiar. And said, quietly. Then let's not waste this one. Chapter 4, The Letter She Never Sent. Morning arrived like a sigh through frost-glazed glass. Myraelin awoke still wrapped in the feel of his arms, though her bed was cold, and her pillow damp with tears she didn't remember shedding. She sat up slowly, the weight of dream and memory pressing heavy on her chest, like old books stacked on a fragile shelf. She touched her lips. There had been no kiss. Only closeness. Only words that lingered like scent on the air. Then I'll love you again in the next life. But she wanted to believe they wouldn't need another. The mirror didn't flicker this time. Her reflection was still, empty-eyed, watching her with silent sympathy. She turned away before it could unsettle her further. In the library wing of her family's manor, a room she rarely entered, Myraelin wandered between tall bookshelves coated in quiet dust. Her grandmother's journals were tucked away here. So were letters. Portraits. Secrets no one had touched in years. She wasn't sure what she was looking for. But something inside her, something old, whispered, read. She found it inside a crimson-bound journal. One she had never opened, though it had sat on the shelf her entire life. The leather was cracked and soft, the gold leaf faded. Tucked between its yellowed pages was a letter. Unsealed. Undated. Written in ink so dark it bled like dried blood. And it was in her handwriting. Not similar. Not vaguely familiar. It was hers. But she had never written it. Dearest Rhys. If this letter finds you, it means I have begun to forget. I always forget. And you never do. I think that's the cruelest part of this curse. That you must carry every version of me while I begin again with empty hands. But I want you to know. I do love you. I always have. Even when I don't remember your name. Even when I look into your eyes and see a stranger, my soul always aches for you. I wish we had more time. I wish I were braver. But if I am to die again, let it be with your name on my lips. Let it be with your voice in my memory. Let it be a death worth remembering. Until my final breath. M. Myraelin pressed the paper to her chest, heart thundering. She had written this. Once. In another life. To the same man who had held her last night beneath the shattered rose window. Tears blurred her vision again. But beneath the grief, was fire. A quiet fury. Who did this to us? The name returned with the bitterness of a blade. Velmora. That night, Myraelin stood before the mirror again. The letter was clutched in one hand. In the other, a silver chain, the pendant Rhysand had given her lifetimes ago, returned to her last night in silence. It was shaped like a thorned rose, its petals curled as if in pain. She hadn't remembered it until he slipped it around her neck. And now, she couldn't take it off. The mirror didn't shimmer. But this time, she didn't need it to. Because she wasn't alone. From the corner of the room, a soft rustling broke the stillness. She turned sharply, heart leaping. At first, there was nothing. Just shadow. The edge of a wardrobe. The drape of her curtain. Then, movement. A figure. But it wasn't Rhysand. This one had no face. Only the outline of a woman, swathed in black lace, her presence more absence than flesh. And from the space where a mouth might be, a voice seeped like smoke. He always finds you. And you always die for him. Myraelin stumbled back. Who are you? She whispered. The figure tilted its head. You called me Velmora once. But now, you can call me the end. And then the light shattered. She awoke on the floor, alone, the mirror cracked, the letter clutched in her hand. A single thorn from the pendant pressed against her collarbone, sharp enough to draw blood. And somewhere in the dark, a memory stirred. Chapter 5, Blood That Knows Her Name. The crack in the mirror was shaped like a lightning bolt, jagged and deliberate. Myraelin sat before it for what felt like hours, knees drawn to her chest, the cold of the wooden floor soaking into her bones. Her fingertips trembled where they rested on the fractured glass. Her own reflection stared back, warped, split into fragments. One eye remained whole. The other was splintered across the fault line. He always finds you. And you always die for him. The words repeated like an incantation. Her name. Her letter. The blood on her collarbone. This wasn't a dream. This was her life, folded over itself, again and again, until past and present blurred into one haunted shape. She rose at last, dizzy with fatigue and dread, and left the house. The pendant throbbed with heat against her chest, as though reacting to her fear. She found Rhysand in the place she didn't expect, but somehow knew. A garden long forgotten, tucked behind the cathedral ruins. Overgrown roses strangled the stone pathways, and statues worn smooth by time stood in mournful poses beneath weeping trees. The sun had not yet set, but the garden existed in an eerie half-light, as if it remembered too much sorrow to ever be fully bright again. He stood with his back to her, gloved fingers gently brushing over a marble sundial that no longer told time. You saw her, didn't you? He said without turning. Myraelin swallowed. Yes. What did she say? That I always die for you. He bowed his head. The silence between them deepened like twilight. Is it true? She asked. Do I always die, because of you? He turned at last, slowly. Rhysand looked tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from sleepless nights, but the kind carved into the soul, centuries deep and impossible to erase. Yes, he said. And no. That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give you. He stepped toward her, eyes shadowed beneath his lashes. The curse was meant for me. But it only works when you love me. Her breath caught. Why? Because Velmora couldn't kill me outright. So she chose something worse. She made me watch. Lifetime after lifetime. You find me. You fall in love. And just when I think we have a chance, she takes you. Why not break the cycle? Why not leave me be? He paused. And then, quietly. Because I would rather lose you 1,000 times, than live one lifetime without having loved you at all. The air between them shimmered, full of sorrow and longing. He stepped closer, slowly, carefully, as if afraid she might vanish again. And when he reached her, he raised a hand to her face, fingers hovering inches from her skin. May I? She nodded. His touch was gentle, cool, like marble warmed by candlelight. His thumb brushed her cheek, lingering there, memorizing her features as if he feared they'd change before morning. I've never met a version of you that wasn't brave, he murmured. Even when you didn't know me. Even when you ran. I'm not running now, she whispered. No, he said. You're remembering. He led her deeper into the garden, to a hidden alcove where vines draped over an iron gate. Behind it, a mausoleum rose like a secret in stone. It was old, older than anything she had ever seen, but her heart clenched at the sight of it, recognizing the carving above the door. M.A.L. Beloved in all her names. Her knees buckled. Rhysand caught her. That tomb, she choked. It's mine. Your first one, he said softly. The one I built with my own hands, before I turned. When you died before the curse was ever spoken. When our love was still mortal. I don't remember this, she whispered, touching the stone. You will, he said. Because your blood remembers. He drew a small, silver blade from inside his coat. It shimmered in the fading light, etched with runes that pulsed faintly, like breath. If you're willing, he said gently, this will help you see. What do I have to do? Just a drop. She took the blade. No hesitation. Her thumb pressed against the edge, sharp, but kind, and a single bead of crimson welled at the tip. She pressed it to the runes on the tomb's door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, light. A deep, red glow spread across the stone, veins of memory igniting beneath the surface. Images flickered through her mind, swift and overwhelming. A field of white roses. A carriage racing through fog. A woman with black lace gloves and serpent eyes. A kiss beneath candlelight, followed by screams. Fire. Myraelin gasped and staggered back. Rhysand caught her again, holding her tightly. You saw, he whispered. She nodded against his chest, heart racing. I was her target even then, wasn't I? Yes. Because you're the soul I was never meant to have. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. And she knows this time is different. This time, you're remembering too soon. Which means... she'll try to stop me. Rhysand nodded. She already has. They stood there in silence, the tomb glowing faintly behind them. The air grew colder. And somewhere, in the distance, a low chime rang out, thin and distant, like a bell underwater. What was that? Myraelin whispered. A warning, Rhysand said. Velmora knows you're waking up. Chapter 6, The Curse of Velmora. The chime still echoed in her bones as Myraelin stepped back from the tomb, the red glow fading behind her like a dying heartbeat. Rhysand hadn't let go of her hand. They stood beneath a canopy of night, and the moon had risen while they were inside the garden, waxing, white, and watchful. Clouds passed over it like shrouds, as if the sky itself were mourning something yet to come. I need to know everything, Myraelin said. Not pieces. Not riddles. I want the truth. Rhysand studied her face for a long, quiet moment. Very well, he said at last, voice low. But once you know, you can't unknow it. And knowing is dangerous. So is ignorance, she replied. He gave a faint, haunted smile. Spoken like the first you. They sat in the broken gazebo at the garden's edge, its trellis laced with thorned vines and black blossoms that only bloomed at night. Rhysand rested his elbows on his knees, gazed distant. Her name was Velmora Evenfell, he began. A priestess of the Crimson Veil. She was once revered, a seer, a healer, a scholar of blood and binding. But she began to crave more than visions. What did she want? Myraelin asked. Me, he said simply. And not in love. In conquest. In power. Because you were a prince? Rhysand shook his head. Because I was the last of the Nightblood line. Born under an eclipse, marked by the old stars. My blood held echoes of forgotten magics. And she believed that if she could bind herself to me, by spell or vow, she would become immortal. But you refused. I did more than that, he said. I loved someone else. He looked at her then, the crimson in his eyes darker than before, as though clouded by regret. I chose you. In a world where love was not enough to save us. So she cursed us. Rhysand nodded. She couldn't curse me directly. But she could bind the soul of the woman I loved to a cycle of rebirth and death. She made it so that every time you found me, and loved me, you would die before the bond could be completed. And I would be forced to live on. Immortal. Alone. With every memory of you. Myraelin felt the ache in her chest return, heavier, sharper. And you never stopped looking for me, she said quietly. No, he whispered. Not once. How many times? 12. And this is the 13th. Rhysand nodded again, slower this time. The final cycle. The curse phrase at the edges now. Time is unraveling. And if we fail here, there will be no next life. Myraelin stood and walked to the edge of the gazebo, staring out at the twisted garden. She came to me last night. Or something like her. She called herself the end. Then she's awakening too, Rhysand said, standing beside her. She must have sensed the tomb was opened. She's watching you now. Listening. Every memory you regain brings you closer to breaking her spell, and that terrifies her. Can we fight her? She asked. Only if you're whole, he said. Only if you remember not just your past, but the truth of your bond to me. The night you chose me, and why. And if I can't? Rhysand stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Then you die. Again. And this time, you take the world with you. She froze. What? The final curse wasn't just bound to your soul, Myraelin. It was bound to time itself. If it collapses in this cycle, it doesn't reset. It ends. She looked at him with wide, steady eyes. Then we break it, she said. He smiled, slow, sad, awed. You always say that. As they left the garden, Myraelin paused at the edge of the path. The wind was still. The stars sharp. "Wait," she said, turning to him. "You said the curse phrase. That time is unraveling." "Yes." "Then why do I feel like this is the first time?" Rhysand tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "Every other version of me, she forgot. She feared. She ran. But this time, I don't want to run. I want to fight. What if I'm not the same soul anymore?" Rhysand took a slow breath. "Then maybe, you're becoming something stronger. Or something Velmora fears more than either of us." Behind them, the black rose vines shifted. A single blossom fell. And far beyond the garden, in a place no sun could reach, Velmora opened her eyes. "She remembers too quickly," she murmured. "It's time to remind her," said the shadow beside her, "what it means to forget." Chapter 7, Graves and Portraits. The dreams were no longer quiet. They came in flashes, like lightning behind closed eyes. A flicker of hands reaching across fire. A red cathedral veil torn from her hair. The scent of lavender and ash. And then a scream, her scream, muffled by the weight of earth and time. Myraelin woke with blood in her mouth. Not a wound. Not a bite. Just a taste, rich and metallic, blooming across her tongue like an echo. She moved through the manor in a daze, one hand clutched around the pendant at her throat. It burned cold against her skin, no longer simply symbolic, but alive, pulsing faintly, as if tethered to something just beyond sight. She passed mirrors she didn't remember owning. And in each one, her reflection looked slightly off. A little slower to mimic. A little more haunted around the eyes. When she finally stepped into the east wing, the part of the house long boarded and locked, her breath caught. The hallway was lined with portraits. Large, regal, and wrapped in thick layers of dust and cobwebs. Women. Each one eerily like her. Different eras. Different gowns. But the same eyes. The same bone structure. The same defiant tilt of the chin. 12 in total. She stood frozen before one painted in sepia tones, the woman wearing a high-collared morning gown with a blood-red ribbon knotted at her throat. At the bottom of the frame was a name, written in faded silver leaf, Soraya L. Dareen, 1813. That was me, Myraelin thought. That was me, and I died that year. As she moved down the hall, she whispered each name. Liliane. Evelyn. Myrae. Cassara. With every step, the pendant grew colder. Heavier. As if mourning. When she reached the final painting, the last in the line, she stopped breathing altogether. The 12th woman was painted in candlelight. She stood beside a man cloaked in crimson and shadow. His face was turned away, but his hand was in hers. The brush strokes on her face were more detailed than the rest, tender, reverent. She wore a deep blue gown, and her hair had been adorned with black lilies. There was no name on this one. Just the inscription, until her final breath. "These were your lives," came a voice from behind her. "The ones Velmora let remain." She turned sharply. Rhysand stood at the edge of the doorway, eyes shadowed beneath his lashes. "Let remain?" she asked. "Some of your lifetimes," she erased completely. "Not just from your memory, but from time. They're lost. Irretrievable. Then why keep these?" "Because she's arrogant," he said. "She wants to show me what I've lost. To make me believe the cycle is inevitable." Myraelin turned back to the paintings. "She's wrong," she said quietly. "Yes," Rhysand agreed, stepping beside her. "She is." They stood there for a moment, the weight of 12 lives pressing down like falling snow. You knew all of them, Myraelin said. Did they all? They all loved you, Rhysand whispered. In different ways. Some fiercely. Some quietly. But all truly. You were never the same, but you were always mine. He reached into the pocket of his coat and drew something out, a small, velvet pouch. I've kept this for you, he said. For centuries. He handed it to her. Inside was a ring, silver gilt, shaped like entwined thorns, with a single teardrop cut garnet at its center. Myraelin stared at it, breath shallow. I know this, she whispered. I wore this once. You wore it the night the curse began. Her fingers closed around the ring like a promise. Put it on, he said softly. What happens if I do? Then the bond begins to awaken. And if I'm not ready? Then the ring will reject you. She looked up at him. What happens if it does? He didn't answer. She slid it onto her finger. The cold hit instantly, then heat, then a blinding flash behind her eyes. She gasped, stumbling, clutching the side of the wall for balance. Visions tore through her mind. A candlelit library. A winter ball. A kiss in a tower before fire swallowed the night. Blood on a white rose. Her own name written in flame. When it stopped, she was on her knees, and Rhysand was beside her, cradling her like glass. It's begun, he murmured. You've touched the first chain. The first. There are 12, he said. 12 locks. 12 lives. You must remember each in order to break her hold. And if I don't? Then she takes you before the 13th. Myraelin looked up at him, vision blurred. Then help me remember, she said. Rhysand nodded, jaw tight. Tomorrow night. I'll take you to the place where Evelyn died. Your second life. The second chain. And tonight? She asked. Tonight, he said, brushing a hand across her cheek, you rest. The blood always takes something the first time. That night, in her bed, the ring burned faintly on her finger. The garnet pulsed like a heartbeat. She closed her eyes and heard music in the dark. A waltz she hadn't heard in lifetimes. And across the veil, Velmora whispered. Unlock too much, little soul, and you may not survive what you find. Chapter 8, A Kiss in the Snow. The snow fell early that year. Though it was barely mid-autumn, the skies over Evervale turned white by dusk, casting a pale hush across the world as if the heavens themselves held their breath. Rhysand waited at the edge of the forest path, where the wrought iron fence that once surrounded the old estate had rusted away into curling shadows. He looked like a statue in the snowfall, still, dark, eternal. A single flake landed on the garnet at his throat, catching a crimson gleam before melting against the silver chain. Myraelin approached slowly, her boots crunching the thin frost beneath them. Are you ready? He asked. No, she said honestly. But I'm not turning back. He gave her a nod, soft, proud, heartbroken. Then follow me. Evelyn's last breath still lingers in the place where it fell. The ruins lay hidden deep within the woods, tangled beneath frostbitten ivy and hollowed trees. A manor once stood there, ornate, powerful, long forgotten. All that remained now was a crumbling staircase, the remnants of marble columns, and the stone outline of what had once been a ballroom. But the snow remembered. Even as Myraelin stepped across broken tile and fallen archways, she could see it. Not with her eyes, but with something deeper, her blood, her bones, the secret thread of memory woven into her soul. The ballroom was full again. Not with dust, but with candlelight. Music. Laughter. Dresses spinning across polished floors. And at the heart of it all, her. Evelyn. She stood in a sapphire gown trimmed with silver lace, her hands gloved, her lips red as roses, her gaze locked with a man in crimson who held her as if she were made of stars. Rhysand. Myraelin stumbled. The vision flickered, then strengthened. The ring on her finger pulsed with warmth. "You're beginning to sync with her," Rhysand said, his voice low beside her. "Your past self. She wants to be remembered." "What happened to her?" Myraelin asked. "To Evelyn?" Rhysand's jaw clenched. "You danced with me. You kissed me beneath the snow-covered arbor just beyond the east wing. You told me you would defy your family. That you would give up your title. Your inheritance. Your name. Everything, for me." Myraelin felt tears sting her eyes. "And then? They poisoned your wine." The vision cracked. The music warped. In the flickering candlelight, Evelyn staggered. Her gloved hand dropped her glass. The ballroom didn't stop, the dance continued, her family's eyes cold and watchful as she collapsed. "They believed they were saving your soul," Rhysand whispered. "That loving me, a creature they thought unholy, meant damnation. So they took you from me before I could turn you." "You could have saved her," Myraelin said. "I tried," he whispered. "I carried you out into the snow. Held you in the place where we first kissed. I begged you to stay. And she died. With my name on her lips." Myraelin walked toward the ruined arbor, nothing more now than two cracked pillars and a vine-wrapped arch. The snow deepened here, untouched. Sacred. The pendant at her throat grew cold again. She knelt. The air thickened. And then, as before, a vision. But this time, it wasn't a flicker. It consumed her. She was Evelyn. The snow swirled around them. Her breath fogged the night air. Rhysand stood before her, younger, less guarded. His hand brushed hers as if she might vanish if he touched too firmly. "They'll hate me," she had whispered. "Then let them," he said. "As long as you are mine. They'll disown me. Then I'll give you a name of your own. They'll try to stop us. Then I'll burn the world for you. Promise me," she said, "if I die tonight, you'll remember me like this." He kissed her. It was the first time. The only time. And the last. The vision shattered. Myraelin fell back into the snow, gasping, the kiss still burning on her lips even though centuries had passed. Rhysand was already kneeling beside her, holding her as he had held Evelyn, gently, desperately. "That kiss," she whispered. "I felt it. Like it just happened." "Because you claimed the second chain," he said. "And your soul is beginning to remember not just your deaths, but your love." "So what happens now?" she asked. He looked toward the trees, his eyes narrowing. "Now, she will come." "Velmora?" "Yes. She's been waiting for your bond to ignite. And now that it has, she'll try to break it before it completes." "How?" Rhysand rose slowly, his cloak sweeping the snow behind him like spilled ink. "She'll turn your memories against you. Twist your past until you can no longer tell which life is yours, and which one she wrote for you." Myraelin stood beside him, her breath visible in the icy air. "Then let her try," she said. "I'll remember everything before I forget you again." Rhysand looked at her. And for the first time in many lifetimes, he smiled without sadness. "Then she's already losing." Deep beneath the roots of the frozen forest, in a cavern of crimson crystals and echoing screams, Velmora lit a candle of black flame. She breathed into it once, and the flame curled into the shape of Myraelin's face. "Let the girl chase ghosts," she whispered. "Soon she'll find the one that kills her." Chapter 9, The Night She Burned. The fire started in a dream. But it didn't stay there. Myraelin awoke with smoke in her throat. Not real, at least, not at first. It was the scent that haunted her, a thick, oily burn laced with roses and iron. Her sheets were damp with sweat, the pendant at her throat scalding her skin, and when she looked at her hands, they were shaking. She stumbled from her bed, moving like someone else, like someone remembering how to run. Her vision blurred at the edges, colors too bright, shadows too sharp. The corridor outside her bedroom stretched longer than it should have, and the oil lamps along the walls flickered, even though there was no wind. And then, the walls were no longer her home. They were stone. Cold. Close. Not here, whispered something inside her. We're not in the manor anymore. She knew this place. Somehow. The floor beneath her was carved in runes. Old. Forbidden. Stained with soot. A ritual chamber. Circular. Caged in iron. And in its center, chained to a pillar of white marble, stood a woman. A version of herself. Younger. Proud. Bloodied. Barefoot. Dressed in ceremonial red. Her name rose unbidden to Myraelin's lips. Liliane. The third life. The one that burned. She couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Only watch. The scene unfolded like theater lit by flames. Liliane screamed as fire licked up her gown, a crowd chanting around her, priests and nobles and masked strangers whose faces glowed orange in the torchlight. They believed she was possessed. A heretic. A witch consort. She had dared to speak Rhysand's name aloud and call it holy. They made an example of her. But Liliane did not beg. She did not weep. She laughed, until the smoke stole her voice. And as the fire reached her throat, she cried out 3 words. I choose him. Myraelin fell to her knees. The vision shattered. But the heat remained. She touched her face, wet with tears, and gasped when she saw the faint red welts across her arms. Like memory had marked her with smoke. Behind her, the pendant glowed like a coal. A knock. Sharp. Measured. Not on her door. On her window. She turned slowly. And there, standing in the moonlight, one hand pressed gently to the glass, was Rhysand. She opened the window without a word. You saw it, he said softly. Didn't you? Liliane. He stepped inside, his boots silent on the old wood. He reached for her arms and gently examined the welts, his face folding into something darker than anger, something close to helpless rage. She's accelerating the bond, he said. Velmora's trying to push your past lives into you before you're ready. If she can collapse your soul, you won't survive the merging. I saw everything, Myraelin whispered. She burned. And still she chose you. She said it. Out loud. In front of everyone. And that was her doom, Rhysand said. But also her defiance. She knew the cost and chose me anyway. You always do. Every time. How many more deaths do I have to remember? Myraelin asked. How much pain do I have to feel? Only enough to break her chains, Rhysand said. You've unlocked the 3rd. There are 9 more. And each will come faster than the last. She wants me to drown in them, Myraelin said. She wants me to forget which life is mine. That's the trap, he replied. If you lose your sense of self, she wins. She doesn't have to kill you. She just has to make you forget who you are now. And who am I? She asked, almost trembling. Rhysand stepped closer. His voice was softer now, not a whisper, but a memory. You're Myraelin. The 13th soul. The final key. You're the one she fears most, because you're the first one to remember not just me, but yourself. What happens when I unlock the 13th chain? She asked. Rhysand was silent for a moment. Then you must choose. Choose what? Whether we end the curse, or become something else entirely. That night, Myraelin didn't sleep. She walked through the east wing again, barefoot, wrapped in a shawl woven by her grandmother. The portraits watched her. Only now, they moved. A slight tilt of the head. A flicker of the eyes. A shift in expression that matched her mood. The Liliane painting was warm to the touch. The velvet of her gown glowed faintly in the candlelight. Myraelin stood before her for a long time. You chose him, she whispered. And I will too. And from somewhere beyond the veil, Liliane smiled. Far away, in the cathedral of withered prayers, Velmora cracked the spine of a book made of skin and shadow. Inside, 12 names burned. But the 13th. The 13th had begun to glow. So, she said, dragging a finger over the page, the girl has fire in her veins again. Then let's give her something to burn. Chapter 10, The Crimson Pact. The snow melted overnight. By morning, the earth steamed in patches where frost had vanished too quickly, as if a fire had passed through in secret. The birds did not sing. The manor windows reflected no sky. And Myraelin did not dream. She woke before sunrise, the air heavy in her lungs, her heartbeat slow but deliberate, like a drumbeat marching towards something inevitable. The ring on her finger pulsed once, faint but insistent. The pendant throbbed against her collarbone like a second heart. 12 lives lived. 3 now remembered. And still, there was more. Rhysand was waiting for her in the abandoned chapel at the edge of the forest, the one where broken pews sat beneath a collapsed roof, and vines curled over a marble altar cracked down the center. He didn't speak when she entered. Instead, he held out his hand, and Myraelin took it without hesitation. He led her to the altar. Upon it lay a book bound in blackened leather, its spine etched in silver runes that shimmered faintly in the gloom. "What is this?" she asked. "A record," he said. "Of every vow you've ever made me across your lives." Her breath caught. "You kept them?" "Of course," he said softly. "Words bind the soul more deeply than blood." She opened the book. The pages whispered as they turned. Her eyes scanned promises spoken in different tongues, different scripts, some elegant, some barely legible. But all, hers. "I choose him. I would die 1,000 times to hold your hand one more moment. If death parts us, then let it know it has not won." And on the final page, blank until now, words appeared in fresh ink, blooming across the page as if drawn by memory itself. "My name is Myraelin. I have died 12 times. I have remembered 3. And I will not die again without breaking the chain." She touched the ink. It was warm. "What does this mean?" she whispered. Rhysand looked at her, the red in his eyes deep as dusk. "It means your soul has made a decision." "What decision?" "To fight." They took the book to the graveyard behind the chapel, where time had eaten the names from most of the stones. Only one grave remained unweathered, its name preserved in delicate gold leaf. Myraelin Aveline Leora. Beloved in all her names. Until her final breath. She knelt before it, the air bitter with frost. "This was me. The 13th life," Rhysand said. "The one the curse never reached. Not fully. The version of you that was born just as Velmora's power began to wane. She tried to stop you, but she failed." "Why?" Myraelin asked. "Why couldn't she stop me this time?" "Because this time," Rhysand said, kneeling beside her, you were born with part of your past intact. A soul too strong to wipe clean. And what happens if I remember all 12 lives? She asked. Then we invoke the Crimson Pact. She looked at him, the wind tousling her hair. What is it? A vow older than any curse. Written not in blood, but between blood. It binds not just soul to soul, but time to time. It breaks what was never meant to bend. He reached into his coat and withdrew a small object wrapped in black cloth. Inside was a dagger. Old. Beautiful. Wicked. Its blade was curved like a crescent moon. Its hilt wrapped in crimson leather. Along the metal ran ancient runes, the same language etched into her ring. With this, Rhysand said, you can choose your fate. How? When the final memory returns, when you unlock the last chain, you drive this into the earth atop your grave. You speak the name you want to live under. And the curse breaks. What if I choose wrong? She asked. Rhysand hesitated. Then everything collapses. You forget me. I forget you. And we live, but apart. Strangers in a world that once burned for us. A long silence fell between them. Snow began to fall again, gentle and slow. And if I choose right, she whispered. He smiled. Then we live. Fully. For the first time. No curse. No blood. No death. And her? Velmora fades. Forgotten. Powerless. And if she tries to stop me? Rhysand handed her the blade. Its warmth surprised her. Like it knew her touch. Then you remind her, he said, that you have burned before, and survived. That night, Myraelin stood alone in her chamber. The dagger lay on the table beside the Book of Vows. The ring on her hand shimmered faintly. The pendant no longer throbbed. It sang. And in the mirror across the room, she saw all 12 versions of herself. Not as ghosts. Not as shadows. But standing beside her. Watching. Waiting. And one by one, they bowed their heads. Behind them, a 13th figure took shape. Cloaked in silver light. Eyes steady. No longer afraid. You are ready, the voice whispered. But beware. Velmora will not wait for the end. She will strike before your heart is fully whole. And Myraelin, voice strong and calm, answered. Let her come. Far below, in the ruins of the ancient court, Velmora stood before a shattered mirror that showed not her reflection, but Myraelin's. She dragged a clawed finger across its surface. You are more dangerous than I thought, little flame, she whispered. Very well. If you won't run, I'll give you something worth running from. And in the mirror, behind Myraelin, a shadow began to stir. A man with Rhysand's face. But eyes, not crimson. Eyes hollow. Eyes dead. Let's see if she remembers you, Velmora whispered. The one who betrayed her first.
Every story has an ending, but some mysteries live on. If you enjoyed this tale, don't let it fade into the shadows. Smash that like button and subscribe for more thrilling stories that will transport you beyond the veil of the ordinary. Subscribe to our channel and your name will appear at the beginning of our next video, where we will pleasantly thank you for your subscribing. Tap the bell icon so you never miss a journey into the unknown. Share your thoughts in the comments. What twists did you see coming? And what secrets do you think still remain? Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and let the next story begin.